I can see you, Kirk.
Chang.
Can you see me?
I'm bloodsucker. You're gonna do your own dirty work now. Do you hear me? Do you?
Set a course. For home.
I'm Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the Federation Starship Enterprise.
Good evening, and welcome to another episode of the Trek Brothers podcast. I'm Chris.
And I'm Shaun.
Hey, Shaun, how's it going?
Oh, I'm doing all right. How are you?
Nice. I'm doing well, too. Did you watch the debate last night?
No, I very rarely watch any of the debates.
Oh, man. There's been so many. I like to grab the popcorn and watch it. And it's like a movie. It's a movie in my mind.
There's been a lot, and I feel like a lot of people are watching it, and that's why there's so many.
Oh, man, a lot. And Justin Trudeau was here yesterday. Well, he's still here, actually, because he was at Arlington National Cemetery. Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, who I really like. He's a young one, too. But
oh, yeah, okay, yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, great statesman. And
yeah.
I look forward to all of the socialists in the world having to work with Donald Trump. That's going to be the funnest thing in the world. It's going to be a strange new world, like the episode we're covering today.
So you're calling Donald Trump the next president of the United States.
I'm calling it right here. What is
going
it?
On record?
It is March 11th, 2016. This time next year, I don't know what episode we'll be doing by then, but we'll be doing it under the presidency of Donald Trump. I'm calling it here and now. If we're doing it under the presidency of Bernie Sanders, might have a little better sound equipment. So, I mean, either way, I think it'll be all right. I think we'll be good. I think we'll be set. Oh, it's you know what it is. I had the hallucinogen that they all had in the cave. It's like I stepped out of the cave on that planet they were on.
Oh my god.
Oh my god, yes, indeed. All right, let's get to the wonderful Trek news.
Yeah.
All hands, brace for impact.
News Trek. So what do you have for News Trek? You have something for News Trek.
Oh, I do have a little bit, and it's going to seem late because it's already kind of late news, and by the time this episode goes up, it'll seem like old news, but it's something that we haven't covered and happened right after our last episode. And Rod Roddenberry, son of Gene Roddenberry, and Trevor Roth, who is the COO of the Roddenberry Foundation, both have been signed on as executive producers for the new Star Trek show. And I'm not as excited as I was to hear about Nicholas Meyer, but this is still good news to me, and I am excited about this nonetheless.
That's going to be good.
I think so.
Yeah, I like Rod Roddenberry. I like that organization. That's a good organization.
Yeah, I mean, Rod Roddenberry's, obviously he's the closest person to the original creator, so we'll see. He probably has something in there to add. Trek Nation was a good film.
Yeah. Did you ever see White Room?
I did not. I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, you know what White Room actually reminds me of? It's actually really good. I suggest it. But you know what? It reminds me of that episode where Picard is kidnapped, and like there's that it turns out like those aliens just want to study like what people look like, what they do in captivity. You know which one I'm thinking about, right? And like there's the ensign girl. It's like that, but it's a completely different movie. But that's a really good one, and he's the dude behind that. But so I mean, it'll be good, I think.
Okay,
I know a lot of random off down the unbeaten road type movies. I know a lot of crap like that. One thing that is in our news that's kind of interesting is, and I have no idea how to say her name. You should say her name, Shaun.
I don't want to be the one that mispronounces it. Shora Agdashlu?
We're going to say you're right. So we got... Now, everything that I've read on this, when it says reshooting, do you think that they're like... Because, it already has a release date. They've already shot a lot, Are they just going to, say, movie, you need to, push this back another year? Because it's already set for July 22nd. But I'm curious to see what, character she's doing and stuff. She was in 24, which is what I knew her from. But I didn't know that she was in X-Men Last Stand. But I don't know what she's going to be playing. She's kind of old. Of
course, I haven't seen X-Men Last Stand since it was in the theater, so I really don't remember that. Yeah, I don't know. She's there's a screenshot of her in front of a Federation flag, and she appears to just be playing a human. Mm-hmm. Oh, the article does say, isn't she going to be like a upper echelon Starfleet command?
Yeah, which doesn't really say much. I mean, but yeah, look at her dress. Because it is like a dress. I'm wondering if she's just like an ambassador or something, because it's not a uniform at all.
No, it's not. Yeah, I don't know.
So, I mean, she might be like the president. What if she is the president? What if she's like, what if they think Hillary Clinton's going to win? And that's like the, Star Trek's version of Hillary Clinton.
I don't know. I have no idea.
Like instead of Benghazi, they have Khitomer or something.
I mean, this article, it's a short article, but it points out the fact that if there's reshooting where you're adding completely new, a completely new character, that means that when they put the movie, or as they're putting the movie together now, they went, oh wait, we kind of forgot something. You'd imagine. Like, I don't know why else they'd have to add stuff.
How hard is that? Do you think that's mostly like an editing thing? Like, do they have to like call in Chris Pine, for instance, and say like, do this scene over again if she's talking, or maybe just her scene, it's just her? How hard do you think it is to do that? Because in my head, when you say reshoot, I just go like, oh crap.
Well, okay, so I mean, obviously, I don't know because I don't work in film, but like, I mean, just listening to like podcasts and other kind of things like that, it is basically like that. Like, hey, Chris, we need to redo this scene. Can you come in and we're gonna shoot this? Mm-hmm. And that's what happens.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I mean,
makes sense. When you scroll down,
I don't know how big of a deal it is for the actors and everything like that, but they probably think they're done, and or they probably have an idea that they might have to come in and reshoot something.
Yeah.
Yeah, you might get one of those things where they found like a boom in the shot, or something ridiculous that they never saw before.
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
something as that.
That'd be interesting. I'm interested to see her. Were you ever into 24?
No, actually, I watched maybe like 1 or 2 episodes of that ever. I don't have anything against it. I just never watched it.
Yeah, it's one of those things. That show is like, I put it in the heroes category, where it's like that was the thing to watch, and when we have kids, because your parents will always talk about Roots, like Roots was the thing to watch, and you're like, yeah, well, we had Lost. So I put it in that category of like, it was like so huge to watch. Everyone was watching it, but not Shaun. But I'm just kidding.
No, I've never seen an episode of Lost actually.
Oh, I've seen a couple episodes of Lost, and I was lost, and it was just because I didn't see other episodes of Lost. That's why I was lost.
I think everybody is or was, but from what I've heard, I'm not a big TV drama kind of person. I don't. A hard time getting into them, even stuff that I do end up watching. I'm kind of like, I don't know why I watched that all the way through.
and by all means, like, we should be, you should always think of like J.J. Abrams as being kind of scary because of those kind of shows, because everything he's produced has been kind of like, what the heck?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Star Wars is good and stuff, but I mean that's kind of off topic. But yeah, I mean, so I put him in the same category.
Yeah.
But yeah, and J.J. Abrams, I'm actually excited about Cloverfield 2, Cloverfield Lane. And because of John Goodman. Like, John Goodman is one of the most underrated actors ever. He is just fantastic.
I'm so glad that you said that, because I constantly tell anybody that will listen this, and I'm sad that you said it before me, because now it feels like I'm just going to be like copying you, but I absolutely agree that John Goodman is one of the best actors that no one pays attention to. Mm-hmm. And I think part of that is, I think he's still, not so much anymore, but I think he had like a stigma maybe like about 10 years ago or so of like Roseanne and King Ralph. Was that the name of that movie?
Yeah, that was.
Where he really was like these like caricatures of a person, and it didn't really show his acting ability as well as some of those Coen brothers movies. I mean, Barton Fink was in the 90s, and that movie's amazing.
Yeah,
with him in it.
Yeah,
but he does really well in those, and in the 3 or 4 or 5, however many Coen brothers movies he's in. And there was something else I saw him in where I was like, man, more people need to be watching John Goodman. I can't even think of what the example was off the top of my head now, but
I really liked him in The Big Lebowski. That was a fantastic
film.
That's another Coen brother one, but I really loved him in that film.
Yeah, he is really good in that. And I think I think probably hopefully more people know him from that than Roseanne. I hope now.
Yeah, me too.
I hope people just forgot about Roseanne.
That show was pretty pushing the envelope when it was around, though. That was
at the time,
really good social issues and stuff.
Is she running for president again this year? Because she ran 8 years ago,
something like that.
Maybe even 4 years ago.
Oh my God, I don't know who's running in the other parties anymore. I used to keep up with that, but then it just got a little ridiculous when you started to get like into the background of those like other party, the other runners. I was just like, They're ridiculous is what they are. That dude, for instance, that guy that is in can never think of his name, but it's the Rent is Too Damn High party. Like he's running for the Democrat ticket. Like that's just like how crazy it is. I mean, that's not like a whole nother party, but that's just like one instance where it's just like, what are you doing? But yeah, I remember when Roseanne Barr did that. It's like, what is your platform? I gotta hear this. I'd love to hear this.
Right.
And they have the Never Trump thing now. And if you look at like the candidates that are coming out of the woodworks, it's just like it reminds you so much of 1964 with Barry Goldwater. It's just so crazy.
Right.
But Barry Goldwater, I'm way off topic. All right, so the other part of news that we have, I'm actually pretty excited about this because I wish that she would talk more about Star Trek and what it means to her. She's talked a lot about Patrick Stewart. And of course, I'm talking about Whoopi Goldberg. She is slated now to appear in Las Vegas for Star Trek 50th anniversary for the convention this year. And, I really like her because I know her and Patrick Stewart are good friends. And I like listening to what she has to say about Star Trek, because I think she is probably the best spokesperson for like Roddenberry's vision. And everything that she has said, I just like eat up because I'm just like, she gets it. Like she knows what Star Trek is supposed to be about. And I'm not sure if you've gotten that. Unfortunately, I don't think her character is like the best reflection of that, but I definitely think Whoopi Goldberg is. I think, and when you say like Whoopi Goldberg, like, okay, I don't, obviously when she showed up in Star Trek, I was a wee bit lad, so I couldn't really have like an opinion or anything like that. But if I heard like Whoopi Goldberg was going to be on Star Trek, I'd be like, I don't know about this. I don't know how I feel about that, because that would be kind of akin to like saying that Tyler Perry is going to show up on Star Trek Voyager. You're like, I don't know about this. But, now that we see the after effect of that, like, you just cannot imagine anybody else being in that character's position.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And Guinan, I don't have a real opinion on Guinan, the character, one way or another. I don't have any dislike for her, right? But there's nothing really that draws me to her. I think it's kind of funny. I think some of the best moments are when she's in the holodeck with Picard as when they're doing the whole Dixon Hill kind of stuff. I do like those.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, and she has her moments here and there. And you're right, we're too young, like me and you are too young to really understand the weight that she brought into that show, because she didn't have to audition for that show. It wasn't like they're like, oh, here's this new bartender character, we're going to have auditions. Whoopi is just like, I want to be on this show. Can I be on the show? And she was such a big star at the time. I mean, she's still huge, but in the late 80s and early 90s, she was huge. And, for her to just be like, I want to be on the show, of course, they're just like, yeah. They found something that works well for her, and she does a really good job in it. But yeah, you're right. We just can't understand, or I mean, at least I can't understand like the real heft that would have had on that show, or lift rather.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I like that. Yeah, no, I think it's cool. It's nice. I don't know how big she is on the convention circuit, like how many of those things she does for Star Trek. But it's cool that she's going to be at this one, which is probably arguably one of the biggest Star Trek conventions ever, or will be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we should do a piece on the Alorians, or as they're called, or whatever their dang species is, the species of listeners, because I think I think they had a lot of potential, and it was kind of interesting. I could respect them in one sense, because I always liked how you would think how does a Dr. Sauron come about from a species that seems pretty benevolent, and right. The whole backstory of the Borg destroying their home planet to the point that this guy has an existential crisis. But unfortunately, that was the potential of Star Trek Generations, but it was just never realized. And I think in the way that Whoopi portrayed her character, you could get a sense all Alorians were really, really benevolent, like I said, and great species. And then what you needed to do is not cast the Fantasy Island dude. You needed to cast somebody as maniacal as you could possibly get, to suggest not everybody came out of the experience of the Borg so well. And you kind of get that sense in the way that Guinan talks about the Borg destroying her home planet and stuff like that, when she sees the Borg in their first encounter. But I just wish that Dr. Sauron would have gone a little bit further.
Yeah, I could see what you're saying. He's not quite out there as much as you'd want him, I guess. Not quite so. I'd want somebody a little bit more. I don't know what the right word would be, but somebody that's a little bit more classic villain rather than just him, who's kind of. He just seems like he's kind of a mean guy, but not really.
Yeah. I want more mean. That's modern stuff. That's about it. That's all I have for the news. What else do you have? Anything else?
No, I don't have any real news right now.
All right, nice. So let's get on to verdict track.
Consider your verdict.
What is your verdict, Shaun?
All right. Well, So this is going to be a little complicated, but I'm on the bad track, and I really want to kind of stick it to Brandon Braga and Rick Berman right now, because in my opinion, and this is an arguable point, but in my opinion, I think they're the two that you point to when you say Star Trek got ruined. And we may not be old enough to really remember when Whoopi Goldberg joined the cast of Star Trek Next Gen, or at least what kind of impact that had. But we are certainly old enough, and I know I am, of thinking there's a point in time, and this happened for me while Enterprise was actually still running, whereas it's like, well, Star Trek's just done. Like that's it. Like I'm not. It wasn't that I'm not watching the show anymore. It's that I'm not. There's not going to be any new content coming out that I'm going to enjoy or that I'm going to care for, or anything like that. And when Enterprise was canceled, I basically just had written Star Trek off as far as ever being able to see anything again. Granted, now we live in this time of revivals and reboots and sequels and everything like that. But I feel like them and their bad ideas just caused the franchise to go completely under. And it took a few years for it to come back. I mean, when Enterprise got canceled in 2003 or 4, I want to say, and we didn't see anything until 2009. And for a number of years didn't hear anything about it. And I think it's, and those two are directly responsible for Enterprise. And I think that had a lot to do with it. But I think, unfortunately, I do think Voyager had a little bit to do with it. But, I think it was just a path they got off starting with DS9, and they never really regained the popularity of what Next Generation was, for better or worse, after that. And then, of course, Enterprise really, I think, turned a lot of people off. It certainly turned me off.
Yeah, I think I buy this. And I definitely buy your argument, actually, because I think when I talked about Parallax, I really praised Brandon Braga for pushing the envelope. But I think as time went by, I think he tried to push it a bit too far, to the point where it got a little ridiculous. And I think a lot of that ridicularity is seen in Enterprise. And definitely Rick Berman for the movies. And, it's funny. I should talk about when... one week, in a couple of weeks, when I have good times again instead of bad times, I'll talk about Red Letter Media some more, because I've already mentioned them quite a bit. But they have this funny segment when they talk about the movies, because they link Rick Berman and Rick McCollum, and one of the things Mr. Plinkett says is it must be something with Ricks. It's really funny, but anyway, I agree with that.
Yeah, and I mean, Berman's on record for saying that it wasn't so much Enterprise as it was franchise fatigue, is the phrase he uses, but he's directly responsible for the franchise fatigue. So if you even take him at his word and saying there's too much Star Trek content coming out in a small period of time, that's your guys' fault. Before Deep Space Nine, or before Next Gen ended, you already had Deep Space Nine. Before Deep Space Nine ended, you guys already decided that you needed Voyager. And before Voyager ended, you kept overlapping your shows. Meanwhile, there's still the movie franchise coming out for Next Generation. So it's just you kept pumping stuff out. And it wasn't that it was too much. It's just that all of it was kind of mediocre. I'm starting to give Voyager its due now, years later. But, I mean... You can't say that it was just franchise fatigue, because it wasn't just that. It was also that you guys Insurrection and Nemesis aren't very good movies. DS9, we obviously have an opinion of DS9 that's not favorable. And then you look at episodes like we're going to go into now, Strange New World. It's not very good. Enterprise may have got better towards the end, but it did not start out very good. And by the end, I don't think hardly anybody was watching.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that too, you got to take and this is kind of how I take Enterprise. You have the idea that they're making a sequel to, or not a sequel, a prequel to the original series that looks, feels, and sounds nothing like the original series. And that in itself is problematic. It feels like it's in a different universe. It feels like it's an alternate Next Generation universe almost.
Yeah. And I would just add to that, because you kind of alluded to it, and you've talked about the networks before, but I think UPN really screwed up on the time slots, moving them around and then finally yanking it. Also, I think the network needs to own up to destroying Star Trek also.
Yeah, no, I that certainly probably does have something to do with it as well.
Yeah, that's a good verdict.
Thank you.
I agree.
All right. Well, what do you got? You got fun stuff.
I guess. So I have happy good times, and I thought about this, about uniforms, because Shaun's talked about his favorite uniform. And, I created like a little ranking about like how I would put the uniforms. But I wanted to talk about just like how cool I think the First Contact uniforms were. I think they look great on film, and I think they're exactly what needed to be to look futuristic, going from the TNG uniforms, and I think they're the best uniform out of any of them. But in order just to get to that, I just wanted to rank them, and after that I'd put the Wrath of Khan 1 Generations, the motion picture, and then Star Trek 2009 type uniforms below those. But I really like the First Contact uniforms, and I also thought they looked great on television when it came to Star Trek Deep Space Nine using them, and I always thought they were a good uniform. In fact, I really regret the fact that they didn't use those uniforms on Star Trek Voyager, because they are my favorite uniform.
Right, but wasn't Voyager already lost by the time they had come up with those uniforms?
They were lost, but I mean, like the episode where they meet Barclay, like they see Barclay wearing the uniform, and it's just like, I don't know why they can't replicate those uniforms.
Well, but wouldn't that be problematic, where if they saw that uniform and then all of a sudden they're out there and they have those uniforms? And I mean, I hate the Voyager uniforms. I think those are by far, out of all of Trek, those are the worst uniforms. The early DS9, all of Voyager run, I do not like those weird jumpsuits that are almost like a reverse of the next gen uniforms. But I do appreciate that Voyager never switched over. And I feel like if they did switch over, they would have had some sort of like explanation, or had to have had some sort of explanation, even if it was like a throwaway line, like, "Oh, this is what they're wearing now. Okay, well, we'll start wearing it too." But so I do really appreciate that. As much as I hate those uniforms, I appreciate that they never switched.
That's true. Yeah, I agree with that. I do wish they looked a little bit better. I agree with you. They don't look as good as other uniforms. Those jumpsuit ones they had in Voyager, and certainly not as good as the First Contact ones. So maybe keep those uniforms for sure. But like,
it's problematic because you see these really nice new uniforms that they're using in like First Contact on, and then also in DS9. You're like, oh man, this looks so good, and then you have to watch the Voyager guys, in their uniforms, go, man.
Right, exactly.
These look terrible. Exactly.
Yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to say those uniforms are awesome. I love them.
I agree. I think I'm a bigger fan of the Monster Maroons, but practicality would dictate that the First Contact uniforms are probably better, because those maroon uniforms from the later movies, the later original series movies, are they seem like they're a real hassle to get into.
Yeah. I have to say, when I say Generations, it's that is the Voyager uniform. Because I know Generations can be kind of confusing because they have the TNG. Not everybody got the memo that they were changing the uniforms.
Switch, yeah.
So, those. The motion picture ones are by far the weirdest.
I agree.
I did appreciate in the Star Trek 2009 ones how they had the little Starfleet emblem within the uniform. That was pretty cool.
Yeah. I agree. The motion picture ones, I think, are indicative of the late 70s. So I feel like one of the things that dates that movie more than anything else is the uniforms.
Yeah, I mean, just we talked about this scene before, but just like go back and watch the carpet lounge scene, and it's just like that just freaking screams it. That just screams it. Like
yeah,
there's the dress, the lighting, the set, everything. It's just like, yeah, that dated it.
Yeah, especially Kirk has like at one point he's got like this. It's a short sleeve, but really short sleeve, and low cut. I don't even like casual uniform. It's white. It's so weird looking. It's like a weird polo almost in one scene, and only Kirk has that one because for some reason Kirk always had to have like his green shirt that he would wear periodically in the original series. It's like, oh, the captain just gets a different shirt every now and then, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's my verdict. Those are my favorite uniforms. Anything else?
Where do your Enterprise uniforms fit into there?
The Enterprise ones?
Yeah.
Oh, those are not even. You know what?
they're too bad to mention.
Yeah. Well, you have a baseball cap. You have to include in there. No, I don't like him. I know what they were going for, because what they kind of look like are like flight suits. Like you'd imagine like a pilot wearing, like they're ready to jump into like their F-16 and fly off.
Right. But
I don't really. I like the idea of uniforms in the future, no matter where they are. Like, if look at my list, like First Contact, Wrath of Khan, Generations, Motion Picture, Star Trek. They're all in their own sense simplistic, right? That's not. No. I mean, even like the Wrath of Khan ones aren't necessarily like, and they have like the most adornment. That's why I'm mentioning them. Contrast that with the Enterprise ones, and the Enterprise has like the weird pockets and just like weird stuff like all over, and I don't like the design, like the color band. I don't like the color band. I don't like the fact that they're like a weird navy blue. When you get close to them, I don't like the emblem of Enterprise. First off, because I think, when you're talking about like the Federation, like, this is the beginning of the Federation, but like, don't have like an Enterprise only kind of emblem. Like, that's weird to me, and I don't like those uniforms at all. And to top it off, I don't like the fact that they come with a baseball cap. Like, to me, like, as much as we've talked about like the uniforms from Voyager, not necessarily being the greatest uniform, like, just take the redonkulousness of that uniform and imagine like if you just put a ball cap on Janeway. It looks so stupid to me. It looks really stupid to me. Yeah, I don't like them. I wish they were a little less flight suity. I don't know how you would do that though, with those, and I don't know why they're navy blue. Like, I just don't like that. Like, I like the sense. Here's another thing too. I have to say, like, utility. When you get to the Wrath of Khan, what Nicholas Meyer was doing with the sense of like that's like a military uniform. First Contact, very futuristic kind of uniform. Generations attempts to be like a slicker design of what they're going for with the Voyager type uniforms. Motion picture ones, once again, we've talked about that being a reflection of the 70s, right? Star Trek 2009, definitely like a reflection of what the original series uniforms look like. But, once again, simplistic but futuristic. When you look at the Enterprise uniforms, it's just like, why did you have to go so like overtly, this is what we're going for, instead of, being more subtle about it? Right. There's nothing futuristic whatsoever or simplistic about the Enterprise uniforms. No. So that's to answer your question. That's what I would say. I know that was a long rant. What do you think about them? No, I don't like them either. I agree with you. It looks like they're going for functionality and kind of that flight suit feel.
but I don't think they ever use those pockets for anything. Maybe they do at some point. I don't know, but I don't know. It doesn't look that good to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're right; they all have baseball caps, so that's a fun little thing.
Oh my god!
I think that's kind of like a throwback to like naval ships now that the USS Ronald Reagan. They all have their USS Ronald Reagan baseball caps, but
yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. And in that sense, I guess it's cool because I really like the Navy and like the Navy-centric kind of nature of Star Trek. I mean, the whole thing is like a Navy, really, rank and otherwise.
But the baseball caps haven't changed at all. They look exactly like baseball caps do now. I mean, baseball caps of 100 years ago don't look like baseball caps now.
You're right.
There's an evolution there. There should have been some sort of evolution in between what we now have and what the NX-01 would have.
Right. But it's not Navy enough for me in order to have the baseball caps.
No, they kind of lose that.
Because I wish they had like the sets like from like Sequest DSV, like that is like overtly like Navy, but like you get the sense of like the enclosed nature of. I mean that of course takes place on an actual submarine, and Enterprise is not a submarine by any stretch of the imagination, but like the Enterprise is too sleek for that for me to be like, oh, that's really cool to be like a naval vessel. And then you put the hats on or something like that.
Right. Well, I mean, it's always kind of the idea that it's a naval vessel, but in the future, even Enterprise NX-01, it's too. They could have made it smaller. Like I know that they made the sets a little bit smaller, like the quarters and the bridge and everything like that, but they could have made it even a little bit smaller, a little bit more claustrophobic, and I thought that would have had a better feel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't like the zipper, the pockets. Like I always like the zipper towards the back and stuff like that. Yeah, it's just I don't appreciate those suits anymore. And added to that actually, and this is just going along with like talking about the whole design of Star Trek Enterprise. Like even T'Pol's suit, I really don't like.
Oh my god! I don't even know what her suit is.
It's like a weird gray thing, and it has that weird band. And the band isn't even. If you notice, the band isn't at her waist. Like the red band, I've always thought should have been really lower. And why they put it up to her bust? Why they put it up to her breasts? Her bust. So like right below where her bust line starts. I have no idea why they put it there, but it's so distracting. I really wish they didn't. And then, like, Dr. Phlox, I always thought, like, because he's his own alien species, right? His, visitor aboard the Enterprise, stuff like that. I never thought that they made his suit as unique to his species as I thought that they should have. Like, if you look at, like, what Neelix is wearing... Like, you could just imagine, like, okay, so that's, like, what Neelix's species wears, right? With, like, Dr. Phlox, it just looks like he got conscripted into Starfleet, and they were just like, here, wear this. This is what all doctors wear. But, yeah, I really don't like that.
No, I agree. I absolutely agree with you. I feel like T'Pol's suit is, like, just... It's like what they did with Jerry Ryan. They just wanted to put her in something revealing without being revealing. Like it wanted to reveal all the curves without showing any flesh.
Right.
And I feel like they're like, oh, well, that sex appeal worked for Jerry Ryan. Let's make it work for the actress that played T'Pol, Jolene Blaylock.
Yeah. How about, dress uniforms are pretty cool too. And, we could talk about dress uniforms, too, because those are large and plenty. But I have to say, like, for some reason, and this is just, like, the historical nerd in me, I also like, and this is going off the whole uniform thing, I like in Star Trek Generations, when they've come off the holodeck, and they're wearing the 18th century naval suit,
Mm-hmm.
and they're just like on the Enterprise. So
Right.
it's just like that to me looks really cool, and they all have the swords, and
Yeah.
the epaulets, and those look really cool, and it's just like such a weird contrast.
Yeah,
But,
that's the kind of weird juxtaposition going on there that's actually really cool looking on film.
Yeah, but I do like also the dress uniforms from it's from Insurrection. Is it from Insurrection? No, maybe it's from Nemesis. It's the one where they meet that weird species and put that thing over Picard's head.
Yeah, that's Insurrection, but they
Yeah.
use, I think, the same ones in Nemesis for the marriage.
Yeah, those ones are pretty cool. But
Yeah, I'm okay with those.
But yes, my favorite uniforms by far are from First Contact.
Fair enough. I like that.
So how's my verdict?
Yeah, I
Anything
like
else?
it. You know what I don't like?
What's that?
Strange New World.
So I've been like trying to postpone talking about this episode, but the best way to deal with a wound, best way to deal with a lot of things is just rip off the bandage and get it over with. So let's get to Talk Trek.
Warp drive isn't going to do us much good with this knife stuck in our belly.
His brain is gone.
Worf, you're a romantic.
Okay, so I gotta say something right here. I gotta say something that I never thought I'd really say. I am really seeing Star Trek DS9 with more respect. First of all, that's the first thing I gotta say. Here's the second thing I gotta say. Okay, so we've talked about before, and we'll call it Borg fatigue, where in Star Trek Voyager you have episode after episode, eventually, where it just seems like you have the Borg on all the time. Now, that pales in comparison, in my opinion, to what I see as Vulcan hatred fatigue from Star Trek Enterprise. And when you read the reviews of Strange New Worlds, it really struck me as, what the heck? Because people love this episode for quote, here's a great episode with character development, focuses on characters, character. You know, go in the past to our other episodes discussions, and I made it abundantly clear that I do not like the fact from the very first episode that there's a bigotry against Vulcans. I really don't like that. So what does the second episode have? Bigotry against Vulcans. What does this third episode have? It centers around this premise that you have this whole hallucinogenic kind of episode, but in order to reinforce what's going on, what they're going through, what do they fall back on? Vulcan bigotry. And it totally got me upset at the fact that after Archer returns to the planet, that he's like, I understand, Tucker. I understand what you're going through because, the Vulcans, I know you're feeling. And it's just like, what is the next episode going to be about? I haven't watched the next episode. And so, is the next episode going to have a tinge of Vulcan hatred? Every week, it's Vulcan something where it's just like, why can't they get out of that right? I know they do. I mean, I know they talk about the Xindi. I know that we have the Temporal Cold War. So I know eventually we get out of that. But I really hate that in these first 3 episodes, the very first 3 episodes, they have this stink of Vulcan bigotry surrounding them. And, I have to say those things. That Star Trek Enterprise is turning out to be my least favorite Star Trek now. At least with DS9, it tried to escape that. Kind of, not necessarily escape, that's kind of a bad term to use. Try to be, different storylines in the very beginning. Or when you're dealing with Garrick is a good example. Like, they didn't focus on the fact that he's like a Cardassian and how bad he is, like, every single week. And the fact that this is emerging like this makes me not like it so much. And last, I have to say, and then we can open this up. I have to say this, like, it's really turning me off to T'Pol's character. It's through no fault of her own. Through no fault of that character's actions or the way that she was portrayed. I am just turned off by T'Pol because every time I look at her or see her, I just like know that she's going to be used as a mulligan to drive that kind of bigotry home to the audience. But that's what I wanted to say.
So there's a lot there, but you're absolutely right. The first 3 episodes is just about Vulcan bigotry. And that's this one more so than any of the others, but it's present in the previous 2, and then in this one it's just overtly there. It's it's what the episode is about, pretty much. And you're right. I mean, it's a little annoying. If they want to like touch on that throughout the show, that's fine. But I don't know why it has to be shoved into our face 3 episodes. Every episode, 3 episodes in. I feel like they already got the point across, and then they have this episode that takes that point even further beyond the line that they've already crossed with it. Like, I get it. Like, I understand that there's a weariness around Vulcans for humanity. And for these different reasons that you know they haven't shared a lot of technology or haven't shared everything that they know with the humans, with Earth, but for some reason we have to keep going back to it and just it has to be a point every single week. I'm looking forward to when we actually finally get to the first Enterprise episode where it's not even mentioned at all. But I don't know how far that's going to be. I haven't really ever seen a season 1 of Enterprise, so I don't know how long it's going to take for us to get there, if we'll ever get there.
Yeah. And the plot of this is so simplistic. It can't even be put any more simplistic other than they decide to explore an unexplored planet, storm, hallucinogenic properties, T'Pol talking to rock aliens, everybody's going crazy, suspicious. Archer leaves the rock planet, comes down to the rock planet, talks to Tucker, understands the situation, everybody is crazy. Everybody the next day wakes up, go back to Enterprise, boom, episode over. It's so simplistic. But I also have to say, I mean, and you know, we definitely want to continue this talk about the bigotry with regard to the Vulcans and, you know, how this is playing out in the series and in this episode in particular. But another thing that I really did not like, I liked, but I didn't like. I liked the ghost story kind of aspect of it. And, you know, you've talked about The Haunting of Deck 12 quite a bit, which is actually written by, like, one half of the writers on this show. But I liked the ghost kind of, like, spooky episodes, like Schisms and stuff like that, Haunting of Deck 12 stuff, you know, like ghost stuff. What I don't really like, and something that nobody has said in all the reviews that I've read of this, and after I watched this, but it's pretty much stolen from William Golden's Lord of the Flies. What you're pretty much watching is this one part in the book when the boys imagine a creature living in this cave. It is so indicative of that part of William Golden's story. Like, I'm about 90% sure they lifted it from that book. In fact, even the motivations of the characters in that book, and everybody should, I'm speaking as though like everybody's read that book, and I really hope. But the character of Ralph and Piggy and their reaction to this supposed creature, and the boys' reaction to this supposed creature, and how it fuels their not insanity, but certainly distrust of one another, and how it becomes an important aspect in how the boys are reacting within their own strange new world, which is, this unexplored island, essentially. Just drives me insane, because I would much rather just read Lord of the Flies than watch this. But I mean, even the character of even Connor Trainor's character, I hope I said that actor's name correctly. Even his character, Ethan Novovich, even his character is just that's Piggy. I mean, that's Piggy. And the whole idea of like the red shirts and not really like them being of the lower decks, and the whole thing is just Lord of the Flies. It is Lord of the Flies. Even like in the sense of Archer returning to the planet, that is totally the adult showing up at the end of the book. And like seeing like the ridiculousness, because do you remember at the end of Lord of the Flies, when they're essentially hunting down Ralph? They're essentially hunting him down. And you remember when the guy shows up at the very end, and he's just like looking, and he's just like, "What the heck have you kids been doing here?" And that is totally the adult showing up at the end of Lord of the Flies, and just like, what is going on? And that's just Archer. Like, whoa. And the only, the bigotry of the Vulcans is not necessarily manifested so well. I'm making a hyperbole here in Lord of the Flies. That's about the only element that they added into it. And the fact that that's the only element that they added into it, I really don't like. But the fact that they lifted it from that, or or at least were halfway influenced by it, I don't really like, because you might as well just watch that or read that book. But I do have to say that.
No, I absolutely agree. Yeah, and that's a really good point. Archer is the adult that shows up to, in this case, the planet, or the island, if you want to use your analogy. Because even he's the one that comes up with the solution when they're going back and forth in between the ship and the communicators. And Archer, let's not forget that just 2 weeks ago in the debut episode, Archer had this huge Vulcan bigotry. Just, he was not a Vulcan fan whatsoever. And then all of a sudden in this episode, that is not anything whatsoever. I mean, they play it up a little bit at the beginning where T'Pol wants says that they send probes out and scan the planet for like a week before they'd ever actually explore it. And he's like, no, we're not doing that. But at the same time, he's like, hey, T'Pol, like, I'm not going to do it your way, but you want to come down here and, scan a bunch of stuff on the surface and, do all your scientific studies that way. So he's throwing her a bone here and there with it. So his bigotry has dissipated quickly in these first 3 episodes. Whereas Tripp's, granted, he's hallucinating, but apparently just is growing and growing, and is very much, the center of this episode's conflict. And it's really annoying. But you're right. For some reason, they give Archer, who, Archer doesn't. If we went back 2 weeks ago, Archer wouldn't seem like he was going to be the adult. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know. It's a little annoying to have him be the adult in this situation and come back, because he wasn't that before. Yeah. The only thing that changes his mind is he has the extra info from the crewmen that they beamed up, and so he knows that they're hallucinating. So he knows that everybody's just acting a fool.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, and Dr. Phlox is like who is the unsung hero of this episode is Dr. Phlox. It would have been just better. underutilized, I guess, is what I would say. Like in this episode, I mean, he's the one that solves the Scooby-Doo mystery, but I mean, it's cool to see the guy. Like from a production standpoint, it's pretty sweet to see the dude with the leaves and stuff like in his face. That's cool.
Yeah, I like that too.
But I mean, once again, like how okay, like the Vulcan language. Here's what I'll have to say about another aspect of the episode where it's the bigotry I am not okay with. Like the use of language is one defining factor throughout history in several, all throughout history, is one use to distinguish in between people. And it's an obviously good use because people of the same culture are going to have the same language. In this context, it paints the Vulcan language as something that is discernible as not being of an acceptable nature, as a defining nature of an outsider is the Vulcan language, and it has to set that precedent. And so you sit back and you ask yourself, so Sato, who speaks the Vulcan language, knows the Vulcan language for probably no other reason than, of course, her being a linguist for one. But it suggests that if they were going to have a crew member that was a Vulcan, they'd have to know a person that could speak Vulcan because their suspicions might be proved correct when they're dealing with a Vulcan. And, of course, there's suspicions that, they're shifty and undermining the Enterprise's primary mission of exploration. And I don't like that. I really don't like that. That they had to use that. I don't like this episode.
No, it's a really rough episode, and there's very little real substance to talk about. I mean, I feel like we've already fleshed out as much as, well, maybe not as much, but a lot of what there is to actually be said about this episode, as far as other than just talking about scenes that happen in it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, there's really nothing that goes on, and this is coming off the cusp of a Voyager episode that completely undid the entire plot of that episode.
Right.
I mean, so
yeah. And I am so shocked, and it says something. I guess I have to say, I am very shocked about how favorably this episode is talked about, and I guess that really taints my opinion of this show. Because if this is the best that this show, because fans are saying this is the best, or not necessarily the best, but a very, very good episode, right? So, if I were to say, and I've said, we've talked about Year of Hell. Year of Hell is a really, really good episode. So people watch Year of Hell of Voyager, they'd be like, wow, it's a really good episode. Or if we talked about, Best of Both Worlds, you'd be like, wow, TNG is a really good show based off that episode. If they're saying the same thing about this episode, does that not make you suspicious of Enterprise?
Well, you've read some different things than I have, I believe, because if this episode has come on one of the lists of Enterprise episodes to watch, I either ignored it, knowing that it was very early on and me and you were going to cover it soon, and just kind of turned a blind eye to it, not wanting to watch it, and then have to watch it again a month or so later. But for the most part, episodes that I've seen recommended on Enterprise are okay. There was one that I heard was a really good episode and watched and was really disappointed by it because it was not very good. But I didn't go into this episode with that perception of this, or even afterward did any research on this episode where this is supposed to be one of the better Enterprise episodes. But you're right. If this is supposed to be one of the better ones, I don't want to keep going with this show, or going on with this show is going to be really hard.
So let me read you something. So this is, and I'm glad Shaun asked this. This is from TrekToday.com. This is in the review section of Enterprise, and you just go to the review section, go to where Enterprise is, And this is an article. This is a review by Michelle Erica Green, and let me just read you what she says. She says of this episode that it tells a highly enjoyable story. This is a quote. Tells a highly enjoyable story. It's sort of a merger between the classic Trek episode, The Naked Time, which I'm going to stop there. The Naked Time, I would not uphold as a classic. I guess if there was a classic screenshot, it would be of George Takei shirtless with a sword. Okay.
Right.
And why is that classic? Because, that's, of course, shows up a lot. But it's also so classic that in Star Trek 2009, Sulu has to have a sword. Okay, so classic in that sense. Okay. Again, the classic episodes, The Naked Time, and This Side of the Paradise, crossed with DS9's Germanos Persona and The Voyager Conspiracy. The Voyager Conspiracy is not so it's more existential in that sense. It's the episode where Seven of Nine is downloading a lot of information about Voyager, and she ends up coming to the conclusion that there's this great conspiracy of Starfleet, and Voyager is in the Delta Quadrant for a reason. But continuing on with what this girl is saying. Quote, yet manages to be creepier than the former and wittier than the latter. This is mostly due to a fantastic performance by Connor Trainer, who owns this episode. He manages to play believable insanity without sacrificing either his authoritative demeanor or his comic timing. For this reason alone, Strange New World is easily my favorite episode so far. Enterprise episode so far. We get introduced to some lower... I'm going to read you this whole thing, and then we'll talk about this. We get introduced to some lower deck crew members, Elizabeth Cutler and Ethan Novich. Okay, we talked about them, who managed not to become redshirts, meaning that we might actually get to see them again. They're mostly forgettable, though it's nice to see a man play the screamer, while Sato's knowledge of Vulcan enables Archer and T'Pol to exchange secret messages when Tucker is listening. Unfortunately, Mayweather and Reed are mostly forgettable as well, though we learn that the Navigator can tell a good ghost story and isn't afraid to brave storms to recover lost food packs. His most enduring moment comes when he worries about the ethics of squashing a scorpion-type creature that has crawled into Tucker's sleeping bag. I'm not really complaining, because the sparks between Archer, T'Pol, and Tucker provided most of the great scenes in previous episodes, but I'd like to see the supporting cast even stronger roles, or at least more memorable dialogue. Archer seems to have learned something from Flight or Fight when he expresses concerns about beaming down into someone's backyard, but goes on to demonstrate typical foolhardiness when he sends an away team without decent planetary surveys, and takes his dog with him too. Too bad Porthos isn't exposed to the spores. I'd love to know whether paranoid dogs envision cats or doorbells. On and on and on. So, okay, here's the point. Is Enterprise fans seem to, and I'm generalizing here because this is just one thing here, one review, seem to really, really love this. It's not like it's so bad. It's like it's so... You get what I'm saying, where it's just it's a fun time. It's a, to me, and to borrow this from our bumper, it's seductively appealing. That kind of it's a good romp. That's a good way of putting it. If this was a movie, what this person is saying is practically the same thing when people call a movie a good romp. Where it's just that's what you got from it. And she mentions the Vulcan bigotry as well, thank goodness for that. But to glean that from it and then somehow say oh, this is Star Trek Voyager, Star Trek Enterprise in a nutshell, where it's good humor and stuff. The fact that this is in there and the fact that this is an episode really leads me not to like Star Trek Enterprise. And anyway, yeah, that's that.
So I have a couple points that I wanted to make, and actually just you reading that review touched on actually a few of them. So one of the things, as a minor note, when they go into the cave, why are they concerned? They're concerned about food and they're concerned about water. But initially when they go into the cave, it's because it's so windy. They wake up in their tents and the wind's, so bad that they're going to seek better shelter.
Mm-hmm.
So they get in there and they're like, oh, we forgot the food. It's just like, well, you guys are just going to sleep for the night, right? Or I mean, I was under the impression that was it. Like once they were just going to go to the cave, wait out the storm. They didn't think the storm was going to take 5 days. They just thought that they were going to go sleep in the cave for a night and then come back out when the storm has passed. So why they're even concerned about food was a little beyond me. And then on top of that, if they didn't think that the storm was just going to pass overnight, don't you think that these trained naval spacemen would be the first thing that they would take with them would be their food packs and water? Don't you think that, we got to seek refuge because the storm's getting crazy? The first things is, I don't know anything about anything as far as survival on the outside. And I can guarantee you that if I had to run away from something, some like camp area that I was in, I'd probably grab the food and water before I grabbed anything if I had any time to think about anything.
Mm-hmm.
They should be trained for that. They would have to have, you would assume, that they would have to have some sort of survival training, just like our military does. And that, I mean, what's number one rule of survival? It's got to be water and food.
Yeah, you would think, and yeah, you would think that they would. Yeah, I completely agree with your statement. And another thing, there should be some contingency plan for an accident happening. Okay, so I mean, you're not gonna plan for like a storm like this, I guess, or can, because you don't know if a storm is gonna hit or not. I mean, look, that storm took out that lover of Picard later on, so the storm's gonna happen throughout history. Okay, it's gonna be bad. But the thing is, if the transporter is so bad, why don't they have good plan Bs? And the reason I'm bringing this up, because you would think a good plan B would be to have rations, to not have to spend a night in a cave, to not have to go through that situation, to have like a shelter, contingency plans, and food would just go along with that.
Right. No, I absolutely agree. It's so weird to me. And then as a side note to all of this, Starfleet in general, I'm glad that you brought up that Picard lost that lady to the storm, because Starfleet is just bad at meteorology. I guess after the Third World War or whatever happens, meteorology as a science just goes away, because none of the enterprises throughout time can predict storms at all. Like, I feel like we have local weathermen that are better at forecasting weather than anybody in Starfleet.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just like, so they didn't know that it was going to get windy that night, and then you see like a radar of when Malcolm and Archer are on the Enterprise looking at the storm, and the storm looks like a hurricane. It looks like they're in a hurricane. Like, you see on the display screen, there's like a hurricane where they're supposed to be, and he even talks about the eye of the storm. I'm just like, my God, they were in how did you not see a hurricane coming?
Yeah, I think the series tries to go in the direction of saying that, their technology is in such infancy that they wouldn't know. But, that's... here's another problem.
But we know!
I know, right? Okay, so we can pretty much predict how hurricane seasons are going to occur. So why can't this spaceship that's, 100 years out in technology land, a starship, okay, can't predict that? Or know that, like, whoa, hold on. Don't go to this planet, don't beam down quite yet because there's this, thing coming. But somehow they're able to discern what kind of class this planet is? But they can't tell that this is coming.
Right. I guess if they didn't show the storm on a screen, I wouldn't have been so upset. But when they showed it, I'm just like, that's a hurricane. Mm-hmm. I've seen Weather Channel to know what a hurricane looks like, and that looks like a hurricane.
But to ignore that,
and
to totally ignore
and
that,
you can predict those. Yeah,
and
why
for the
would you,
computer
anybody be like?
Sorry, go on.
Oh, I was just gonna say, why would you just be like, oh, there's a crazy storm in this area. You guys probably should not stay the night. We should all go back up to the ship and monitor it from up there. We came down, we had our little fun, we saw the stuff, we scanned, we took some samples or whatever they do, and let's go back up to the ship and go about our business and stay around the planet if they must. But I think that and to go back to that article that you read, that review, they're like, oh well, Archer kind of learned his lesson from Fight or Flight from the episode before about just going into a place without saying anything. But he didn't really, because they don't they do a really quick scan or whatever to make sure that nobody's around on this planet. Or that people have been here, but it takes zero time for them to go through it, and then they're like, well, let's just go down to the planet. We're just going to go to the planet right now, and
go to the planet where no dog has gone before. Oh my god!
Right, and I'm going to play a clip just to further my point here.
DePaul.
17% oxygen, 81% nitrogen.
Sounds like home. Any people?
The planet supports a diverse ecology, but there are no signs of humanoid life.
Still, someone may have a claim on it. We don't want to go waltzing into their backyard. Scan for marker buoys, beacons, man-made satellites.
None in range, sir. Looks like no one's planted a flag just yet.
Prep a shuttle pod, Mr. Tucker. I like the looks of the northern continent. See if you can find a good place to set down.
Yes, sir.
Captain, there are a number of protocols you may want to consider.
Protocols?
Vulcan ships would begin by sending automated probes down to collect more detailed scans. If the planet proved to be Minshara class, we would then conduct a geophysical survey from orbit.
Minshara class?
Suitable for humanoid life?
How long would all that take?
6 or 7 days.
You expect us to sit up here for a week while probes have all the fun?
This planet has been here a long time. It will still be here in 7 days.
I understand that you have a more cautious approach, but we didn't come out here to tiptoe around to get the pod ready. I'd like you to put together the survey team. I assume that's not a violation of protocol.
Okay, so you would imagine, I got a lot to say about this stupid clip, but you would imagine one of those protocols that you think Archer would follow, even without T'Pol's advice, is, hey, let's get a weather reading and see what it's like down there, because we don't want to just land on the northern continent if it's in the middle of a rainstorm.
Yeah, you'd think that. And something I want to mention also, because I think that definitely makes your point. The idea of planting flag, make sure there's not, how stringent do you think they're trying to make the prime directive in this instance? Because for this instance, it just seems like the prime directive is just this document that restricts all contact, all forms of interacting with species, and it's just like try to find the most uninhabited planet as possible. So like what would happen if they found it's pretty hard to make a satellite. All right, it's pretty hard to make a probe, or it's pretty hard to make these things that they're trying to search for. So if they make one of those, would that not suggest that it's a sentient species? Even going further than that, a pretty advanced in technological terms type of species. Wouldn't they want to meet that species? So what it's suggesting is if they found that probe, or whatever Archer is saying, are there any of these blah 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 around the planet? Like, are they just gonna be like, oh, we shouldn't meet these people? It's like, how stringent are you interpreting? Is there like is he like the Ted Cruz of the Constitution? Is he like the Ted Cruz of the Prime Directive, or is he like the Bernie Sanders of the Prime Directive? Like, how stringent are you reading the original intent of that?
Right.
I got that from that scene.
Yeah, well, yeah, and like I was saying before I played the clip, it's a real-time situation where in less than 2 minutes they're like, hey, check to see if there's any satellites or anything around here. Nope. Okay, let's go. Like, it happens literally that fast. It's like, well, that seems really rash. Like, I understand that you want to show the difference in between Vulcans and humans, and Vulcans are going to take 6 days before they want to land on the planet. Mm-hmm. After doing thorough scans and everything like that, and you're like, oh, we don't want to wait that long. We want to go see a new, different planet that we've never seen before. But they take almost zero protocol before doing that. It literally happened all within that clip where they do some scans. They're like, all right, it's good. We're going. Like, do a little bit more research. Compromise research for like a day or two or something, I feel just like if you were on a spaceship that's going out into the unknown for the first time ever, when you find a planet, you're not going to just be like, hey, does it look like anybody's here? No? Okay, we're going. Yeah, I feel like there'd be a lot more research that goes into it before saying, okay, we can land on this planet.
Mm-hmm. And also, in Star Trek First Contact, you didn't see a probe come to our planet after, like, oh, they conducted a warp test. Let's just send a probe first. Or,
right.
We don't know about that planet. Like, that kind of contradicts in my head what happens in First Contact as far as on the Vulcan part. Or maybe, the fact that they detected that warp signature. Maybe that changes the situation. But she didn't really, make that clear that, there's, different situations in which they would consider just beaming down the planet willy-nilly before, investigating the planet for a week's time before doing such a thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. It seems fine. It doesn't seem fine, but you're right. Like, I never even thought about that. It is a little weird that Vulcans land immediately after you do a warp drive test, and then here a few years later, the Vulcans say, "Oh, well, we don't do that. We, take a bunch of examples." Maybe it has to do with the planet's habitated or not. I don't know.
Yeah, and it's so oh, we're going down to this planet. Put on the ball caps.
That's true. There are a lot of ball caps in that little their pod, their shuttle.
Yeah, that's where they keep all the oh my god, I don't like this. But you have an interesting question here. Well, it's actually a quote. Challenge your preconceptions.
Yeah, or they'll challenge you, and that's the I guess that's the takeaway that you're supposed to have, and it's Trip when he's hungover from his little trip. Mm-hmm. I know that sounds weird. From his little hallucination night, where it's just like, oh, and then he starts talking about this Vulcan guest lecturer that he had in his high school or whatever it was, and one of the things that he says is challenge your preconceptions or they'll challenge you, and that's the only bit of philosophy that you can get from this episode of and it's very overtly a bigotry. It's just if you're born with or have this idea of a dislike or a hatred, or you think another race or ethnicity or whatever is inferior, think about it for a second, and maybe it'll actually, when you break it down, it won't make sense anymore, is the takeaway. That's the only thing that I can get from that. And I'll play the clip too. It's this right here.
Look, I know I kind of shut my mouth off last night.
You were under the influence of the pollen. We all were.
Challenge your preconceptions, or they'll challenge you.
Commander?
That's something Mr. Velik used to say. 10th grade biology class. He was a Vulcan scientist who came to teach us about life on other worlds. I'd never seen a Vulcan before, not up close. It scared the hell out of me.
Perhaps it's not too late to follow his advice.
So, I get what they're saying, but I mean, and again, it's very overt, especially for Star Trek. There's nothing subtle there. They spell the entire thing out to you. It's just like we had this night where we're out of our minds, literally out of our minds, and my preconceptions of race came to a head, which they already showed in the previous 2 episodes, and I didn't really like it. So maybe I should, not be quite like that, because maybe they are nonsensical. And when you take it to the extreme, like Trip did, it shows how, at least in his mind, and in an ideal word, how absurd it would be, or it is rather. But that's the only takeaway I can take from this episode, and I'm not saying that it's a bad takeaway. I'm just saying it's not well done. Because I mean, it's already obvious, and then so they do it in an obvious manner on screen in the story, and then they literally just say it again.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's about as much philosophy as you can get out of it, like you said.
Yeah.
I have nothing really else to say about this. I have really nothing else to say. Like, why is it so bad at the beginning? Why is it so bad at the beginning?
I don't know. And, again, I have another thing that I wanted to say that your review actually brought up. And it's you like that there's no red shirt mentality, that nobody dies, but I wrote in my notes at the end, nobody dies, ? Because you have 2 people who are basically red shirts. You have 2 lower deck crew members that don't do anything. Obviously we haven't seen them in an episode before, even though there's only been 2 episodes.
What happened to Novovich? What happened to him?
You don't, yeah. You don't feel like you're going to see them again, but neither of them die. And I feel like, if this was the original series, like one of them definitely would have died.
Well,
really quick.
He's going to be fine. He's going to die. Then he wasn't going to die. Then he's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, I'm sorry I cut you off. Sorry, go on.
No, it's fine. I don't know. I just feel like if it were more Star Trek, it would have somebody would have died probably.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would have been fine with him dying.
Right.
This episode is just not good, and I don't understand the argument that it's good characterization. Because you get nothing out of it at the end.
No, you don't get any characterization out of it. And see, at least that, like, as much as I was making fun of last week with the Voyager episode, and how the Voyager episode with the timeline erases everything that actually happens, at least within there, you get, like, the kiss is telepathic. You kind of get a Janeway and Tom, like, little bit of a storyline. Like, you get a feel for the characters better. Granted, maybe those events don't happen, but those developments within the characters still are now etched in your mind. This is nothing. It's just them basically on a hallucinogen going crazy at each other. Like, so there's nothing there to be developed other than they're hate mongers.
And they have and to use the quote that you played. Okay, so I know you really you know a lot more about television stuff than I ever do. But there's this, concept in throughout series that has existed where it's like a feel good kind of thing, lesson episode. I don't know if you're quite familiar with that. I'm sure you are. Where it's like you learn something at the end of the episode, or the characters learn something at the end of episodes. And in the 90s, that was criticized. In the 70s and 80s, when this kind of emerged, it was really, really criticized. And a lot of shows were guilty of doing that. And one of the big purveyors of that is Different Strokes, or Archie Bunker and stuff like that, where the character through 30 minutes would go through an ordeal. And then at the end, the characters could all, literally, to borrow what's happening in this episode, sit around a campfire and be like, we learned a lesson. And it was exactly what this episode portrays, was we learned blah, blah, blah. And, T'Pol's like, yes, I think so. And, it got so bad in television shows of having the weekly, lesson learned. Do you remember in Seinfeld where I can't remember what happens in the episode? There's an episode that something the characters go through an ordeal, and then Kramer makes the statement. He's like, "Well, at least everybody learned something." And then Jerry says, "No, we didn't. We didn't learn anything." And it's that criticism of that television that came out of the 70s and 80s, where it was feel good, we learned something, and then to have this one episode of Star Trek where it's just we learned something. And it's just no, you didn't, because nothing happened to you. All that happened to you is you went through you were practically on drugs for a day. So you had this hallucinogenic experience, and you think that what happened is you did acid and then came out looking at Vulcans differently, or that's what I should look at my life differently. That, to have that as a plot, what is this, 2001? To have that as a plot is just mind-boggling to me. And it's that feel-good, we learned a lesson. Let's pat ourselves on the back. That is totally something that was done, tired by writing standards by 2001. And the fact that that's employed in this episode makes this a less than stellar episode.
Oh, that's hilarious. You're right. They almost could have just all been walking to the pod together at the very end of the episode and just freeze framed on them walking in the the green grass, and then played some corny, the theme music.
Exactly.
So, yeah. I mean, that's correct. It took us 45-50 minutes to go from point A to point B, and in there we went through some weird little storyline where they come out and they learn some corny lesson, and you're right, it is just that kind of family sitcom lesson of the week situation. This is what we did this week. We learned about racism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
And Star Trek was good and great because it's above that. I mean, it is a commentary and on society, but without saying oh, hey, this is what we did. We learned everything about it, And I get sometimes it's heavy-handed. Let that be your last battlefield is the, that's the black on the left, white on the right, white on the left, black on the right episode. And that one's fairly heavy-handed too. But at the end, it'd be like Kirk just saying black and white are fighting against white and black, and it doesn't make any sense. And you guys now know better. That's not the way that episode ended, but that's the way this episode ended, with just saying exactly what happened.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Ugh.
That is, yeah. I don't like that. Why did they have to stoop so low? I can't think of an instance in another Star Trek. I mean, maybe when we go through all the episodes, we'll come across another instance. But I can't think of another episode of Star Trek where it just points to the episode that you just watched and be like, this is the lesson that we learned. To do so, I think, is a gimmick that kind of cheapens Star Trek.
It's going to happen in 5 weeks on the next Enterprise episode, probably.
Maybe. And okay, let's be frank here. Maybe Star Trek Voyager does this to an extent, where it's at the very end of Star Trek Voyager, when you've watched all of Voyager, maybe you can say that Janeway can stand on the bridge of Voyager and say, look at all the things that we were challenged with, and we're still Starfleet. You can say that. She doesn't say that, but I'm just saying, like, you can make the argument that that show puts that across. You can also say that of, TNG, Picard. He can say, at the end of every episode, or, like, whatever they come across that week, he's like, look at what I did. I was a good diplomat. I got us through that situation without having to fire a torpedo. Or look at Captain Kirk. He can say in numerous episodes, I got us through the situation without having a crew member get killed. Or, I did what was right. I kept us Starfleet. I followed the book. You can have situations, on a weekly basis where Captain Sisko says, I created a harmonious crew that got along. On and on and on and on and on. You can go. And the fact that Star Trek does not cheapen itself by doing that makes it appealing. The fact that they chose to do that in this episode is very not appealing. And I'm being nice when I say that, because you can easily do that, is what is the point that I'm making. You can easily, it's so amateurish. It's so very amateurish that you can do it, and the reason that and the fact that they did it is just like, why? Why did you choose to do it? You didn't have to do it, but you did it.
Right. Oh yeah, I absolutely agree. It's bizarre that this episode did that, especially this late. I mean, most of the people that worked on Enterprise were already seasoned and had been with Star Trek and kind of had that feel. So for them to do something like that is really bizarre. I don't know. I mean, I understand your point. When you pick apart and think about this episode, it's hard to. It's hard. It's not hard to be negative towards Deep Space Nine, but it's hard to say that Deep Space Nine is the worst Star Trek TV show ever, because Enterprise really isn't very good. And I mean, this goes back to my verdict track. It just. I didn't watch Enterprise in its first run because every time I tried to watch it, I didn't like it. And it's probably because of episodes like this. I'm sure there are more coming up in season 1 that are going to be exactly like this, where we have a really similar opinion of it's just like, why did I just watch this? This was not a good watch.
Let me ask you a question. I want to get your opinion on this. What do you think the episode would have been like if the rock creatures that T'Pol supposedly was conspiring with, that, they didn't stop and think in their heads, all right, this has to be a what word am I trying to say? Hallucination. This is an hallucination because, how do the rock creatures know Vulcan? But anyway, that's beside the point. Do you think that this episode would have been far more interesting if those rock creatures were real?
I think it would have been, but then I don't know. It's really complicated, because then why would T'Pol have been talking to them? And the whole idea that she's like, I didn't talk to anybody, like that whole plot, like, then doesn't exist. I do think it would have been a more interesting episode, and I don't know where they would have went with it, but I think it would have been more interesting episode if there actually were creatures on the planet that they didn't recognize, or they, originally didn't scan for and didn't see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I concur. You're right.
And then maybe there was something where only T'Pol could talk to them because she's a Vulcan somehow.
Mm-hmm.
But, and she had the best interest of the Enterprise crew, but she was the only one that could have actually talked to them. They could have done something along those lines where everyone was just trusting her. But, like that, what's that episode of, I think, is it Blood Fever? The episode of Voyager, where they go down to the planet and they think it's completely abandoned. They're looking for some sort of ore or mineral or something like that. And B'Elanna's acting crazy because the Vulcan engineer is going through the pond floor.
That's like the best Vorik episode ever. It's really good episode.
Yeah, he impresses on her, but remember they go down and they go into the cave, and then they find those aliens in the cave where there's like, oh, we had no idea that you're here, and then the aliens are like, well, yeah, that's because we hid ourselves really well.
Mm-hmm. Well, that has a really great. I mean, they have like the Borg body and stuff.
Yeah,
like,
but it could have been like that, where it's just like, yeah, especially with the primitive NX-01 scanners, and like, oh, well, we wouldn't have picked up anything like this, as a life sign, and that's the way they could have ran an alien there without getting them being detected.
Right. I bring up the Borg skeleton because in that episode, like, there was like holy cow, what happened to this planet, or what's going on here? And so, like, wouldn't it have been amazing if, like, that was tied in a greater sense to, like, why this place isn't there, which in a sense it is. But, like, show, like, bodies or something. Like, that'd be really crazy if they beamed down and it wasn't, like, that paradise that they showed where, like, everything is, like, lush. Like, what if they beam down and it's, like, this city that's just, like, destroyed, and they're like, holy cow, what happened? And then you find out that, like, people just, like, ate themselves alive because, they went through an hallucinogenic experience that they believed was true and didn't get out of it, and that destroyed, the society. Something like that would have made the episode more interesting. I'm just throwing it out there. You didn't have to do that. I'm just throwing it out there. I don't know. What'd you think of that?
No, it's fine. There's neither of us are writers, and neither of us are writers, and especially neither of us are sci-fi writers. And we already came up with like 3 different ideas for this episode that were better than this episode.
Yeah.
It just, oh my god, this episode is so bad. I will bring up, we talked about how the dog was on the pod and went out, and I think I've maybe even said this on the podcast before, but it's kind of neat that they do this early on, because there is an episode, I want to say in 2nd season or maybe 3rd season of Enterprise, where Archer takes his dog onto a planet and the dog actually gets something. So when they come back up and they go through decontamination, Porthos actually doesn't get like they try to decontaminate him, but whatever, it just stays in dogs, and so the dog has to stay in a sick bay for a night. Yeah, and that's the entire episode. It's actually called A Night in Sick Bay, I think, and it's about Archer and Porthos, because Archer doesn't want to leave Porthos, so he actually goes and sleeps in sick bay with the dog for an evening, for a night.
He's like Will Smith there.
Yeah, it's actually, and I think that's a good episode. So
it's I Am Legend, that episode in a nutshell with the dog. Remember when Will Smith had to kill his dog?
Yeah, I do.
Turned into a zombie dog.
Yeah.
No, that episode is pretty good. Sorry, I didn't mean to make fun of that.
No, it's fine.
Yeah, and poor Porthos. I've got nothing to say else to say about this episode. I mean,
no, I think I'm good. Like, you're right. We haven't encountered an episode yet that's been so.
It's not as bad, overtly, as bad as when we talked about Code of Honor. Is not that bad.
Well, nothing's going to be that bad, but
no. But this definitely ranks down.
This has been a rough. So I mean, I don't know how you see the show, but I see the show as like kind of a 5-week. The way we run it as a 5-week kind of set. And then we reset to and then do the next 5 shows.
Yeah.
And like this set of 5, like the episode number 3's really rough, just across the board, pretty rough.
Agreed. Yeah. And you start off with Mud's Women and get here. I mean,
yeah, Mud's Women, the most racist episode ever. What did we do? Oh, DS9 was that Garrick episode, which was It's bad for me, especially when I'm saying that Voyager and Deep Space Nine were the best episodes out of this the thirds.
Yeah, I mean, I really like that Voyager episode that we covered. That was, and a lot of that it's just because I really like that kid. But
Voyager can certainly take the lead every now and then, I'm sure, in a set of 5, but. Typically, like, I'm going to be an original series and Next Generation fanboy because that's really where I'm at, but not this time. I mean, I don't really care for Mudd's Women, but Code of Honor is just a terrible episode. So rough all around. The only episode that was really good this past set, like this set of the third episodes, was the Voyager one.
Yes, that I will gladly second. Next week, I mean, when we start with the next week, start over again with the TOS. The Enemy Within, by contrast, is like one of the best episodes. It's a really, really good episode. Nice.
Yeah.
So thank goodness we have something good to talk about next week. But that's all I got to say about this.
Yeah, no, I'm good on this. Do you have a ranking for it by chance?
I'll give it 2 baseball. I'll give it 1 baseball cap out of 5 baseball caps. What would you give it?
I'll give it a. I don't know. I'll give it a jumpsuit.
I gotta ask you, what do you think about their use of psychotropes? Do you think that's interesting, or does that make the episode any more interesting than it actually isn't? Like how I put that.
Yeah, I do. I don't know if. I mean, to me, it almost seemed like before the reveal that they're hallucinating, it almost seemed like they're hallucinating. Mm-hmm. And I know the idea of this specific psychotrope is supposed to make you aggressive and anxious and distrusting. But I don't know. It could have been anything. It didn't have to be a psychotrope. It didn't really have to be. That's just what they picked. Because their hallucinations, as far as I can tell, are very few and far between. Because it's really weird, because the 2 crew members, Mayweather and the lady, just pass out, basically. But Mayweather sees a couple things, but there's no real indication that Trip ever actually sees anything. So he never really hallucinates. He just gets really aggressive.
Yeah, and very yelly. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's bizarre.
Oh, yes, indeed. Well, shall we move on to the great talk? Well, we just covered our Trek.
Yeah, let's go.
All right.
I'm doing my part.
I'm doing my part.
I'm doing my part.
I'm doing my part too.
This time we'll handle things without your help.
They're doing their part. Are you?
Okay, I gotta say I'm interested in hearing this. Go, Shaun.
All right, so I'm going to play the Patrick Stewart challenge clip, which is well, you'll see what it is. But before I play it, I'm just going to call everybody a caterwauling, beef-witted canker blossom.
Hello, I'm Patrick Stewart, and I'm here for the Antaeus Theatre's Kickstarter campaign for their new home in Glendale. This is their Shakespeare Insult Challenge. Make a donation, make a video, spread the word, or you're an ingrate and cankered louse.
Okay. So, I mean, he basically totally explained what he was. So, the Antaeus Theater company, which is based out of LA, was looking for building a new theater. They decided to do a crowdfund Kickstarter campaign, and Patrick Stewart made this video to help them out. Some other Star Trek alums, Armin Shimmerman and Nicole DeBoer, and the girl Linda Park, all made videos too, in the same kind of vein as Patrick Stewart, although his was probably the funniest. The Kickstarter goal, or the Kickstarter campaign, the page, actually they've already hit their goal. Their goal was 75,000. As of right now, they're at $77,000. They still have 5 more days left, and there's only 700 backers. So the backers are throwing in quite a bit of money. I don't know if it's, one person put in a lot of money and there's a lot of other small ones, but yeah, I thought it was interesting.
That is very, very interesting.
Yeah, this theater was celebrated, or I didn't celebrate. It was founded in 1991, and they just put in a bunch of different actors. A lot of people have played there. Armin Shimmerman has played there. That's why he did one. Who's the Red Fox, the guy that's from the president of the Federation, and the guy from Year of Hell. He was there. Kurtwood Smith. He's done something for this theater. Obviously, Patrick Stewart has ties to them. So yeah, just a cool little cause. A really a kind of funny Shakespearean video with and I guess I didn't explain that quite right. The challenge is to create the Patrick Stewart explained it better than I could. Was just to create a Shakespearean insult, and that's what all those videos were just those different actors doing different Shakespearean insults.
Yeah, that is really cool. I love that.
Yeah, it was kind of fun. I really liked it. I liked that. I found that.
Have you seen the trailer to Green Room?
No, I have not.
Everybody needs to look up the trailer to Green Room, which is coming out April 29th. That is an insane character. It looks like that Patrick Stewart is portraying.
Really?
Yeah, a really good villain. But look up the horror movie that's coming out April 29th, Green Room. That's a cool thing. That's a cool thing that's coming up.
Yeah, I wrote it down just so I wouldn't forget.
Yes, but that's cool. I like that Shakespearean kind of stuff.
Yeah, and they hit their goals, so good for them.
Yeah, totally.
Much better than We Want War for whatever that Indiegogo. Sorry, no. Michael Dorn.
Oh man, poor Dorney. That's cool. I like that. Cool. So what I wanted to talk about with the STO is the state of the game. And, of course, in the past couple of weeks, I've talked about the skill revamp and what that means for Star Trek Online. And today there was actually a live stream that Cryptic put on to kind of go through what's going on with the skill revamp. And it was essentially a big, this is going to be great for the player base. And there's been a lot of talk about the state of the game on the forums and what's been going on, and a great website to just see the skill revamp and what it means is this website. You can actually test this out. Somebody created a simulator of what the skill revamp is going to look like, and you can go to aesica.net/STO. And you can actually play around with the skill revamp and how it's going to look. But there's been a lot of things that have been happening lately where the game has not been going in a favorable direction. And it's kind of odd to bring this up week after week now, because my intent is to get Shaun involved in Star Trek Online, and everything that's been going on sort of reinforces all the bad things that are in Star Trek Online. Unfortunately, you got to know the good from the bad in order to know how great Star Trek Online actually is, to be able to be objective in the whole scheme of the game. But an example, and this is on the forums, a big debate is event fatigue, and this is most This is the most reflective in the most recent event, because they created an event, they brought back The Breach, which is arguably the worst possible STF ever in the history of STO. I mean, it is just long and boring and monotonous, and sometimes you get a pug group, a pickup group that is so bad it takes you forever. It could take up to 30 minutes. I'm not kidding. 30 minutes to complete one of these things. Is just not a good event, and the reward is, a ship that is not an actual ship. It's just used for the Admiralty system. It's a card, basically. Not a good return on your investment of having to do this STF every 20 hours, I have to say. But, there's this post, actually, on the forums that showed up 3 days ago, where somebody wrote, you want to know what killed the queues, and they talk about a lot of revamps. The R&D revamp being a big one, and I can't believe it's already been 2 years ago since they implemented that, which was intended to bring back crafting, which had essentially died in the game. But the fact that they tied it with the upgrade system just made it not very fun. Because in order to advance, you need to have good gear, and you should be able to upgrade all your gear and stuff to keep up with the changing game. And it just keeps getting more and more costly to be able to do any of that. It's just not fun in that sense. They've gotten rid of accolades. This guy goes on to say, I mean, he really does a good job about criticizing the games and such. It's still my favorite MMO, but of course lately there has been things that have been less than favorable, and the skill revamp is definitely one that I've gone on and on about. And the fact that that's just out there now, like I said, with this guy's little simulation of what you can do with it, it is ridiculous. It is just ridiculous how simplistic they made it. But I still want to get Shaun involved in this, and still need him to play.
So when you say it's simple, that almost makes it appeal to me. But so how is this skill leveling done before? Is it is it like a D&D kind of type situation? I mean, I know it's not strictly D&D but how is it getting simpler? Because simpler almost makes me want to get into it more, even though you're telling me it would want to make me get into it less.
Mm-hmm. Okay, here's a really great example. So let's go to, I need to look this up. Because I will exactly describe why this is true. I'm going to go to STO Academy Planner, and I'm going to go through what the skill tree looks like compared to this new one coming out, and why it's bad. Okay, so the first instant that you get in the current skill tree system is Starship Attack Patterns. And the description of that skill says, this skill improves your Starship Attack Patterns Alpha, Beta, Delta, and Omega. The higher your attack pattern skill, the better your attack patterns abilities will perform. Tactical captains who learn 6 ranks unlock the ability to train bridge officers in attack pattern Omega. Okay, so those are very, very good skills, and you can only spend so many skill points in order to enhance that ability. So you're specifically looking at that ability. You're specifically looking at Starship Attack Patterns. So now go to the new revamp. Go to what they have now, and it's practically non-existent. They have nothing on there that deals with the specificity of attack patterns. So it's as though that's gone. It's non-existent. And you look at every single skill tree, a skill set that they have under tactical, and it's like, okay, so how do I enhance that skill? What happens to attack patterns? Can you affect attack patterns? You don't know what affects attack patterns. You don't know unless you get on there and you actually like do a skill tree, fill it up, play the game, compare your numbers to to the previous build, and say, okay, my attack patterns or the effectiveness of my attack patterns are better or less better, or whatever the case may be, than before. You have no idea because nothing on here says anything about attack patterns. And that's specific. That's specific on the old tree. On the new tree, it's so simple, you just don't know. Because it's as though they got rid of the concept of attack patterns. Okay, so take the second one, for instance. The second one is Starship weapons damage. On the new tree, they have what is called energy weapon training. That's the very first little thing. And all it says is plus 50. Plus 50 what? Plus 50 what? Because on the old one, you can see a bonus level of however many skill points you put into that one particular Starship weapons training, how it's going to benefit you. So you know that that's going to enhance. So now they broke it up. Energy weapon training, projectile weapon training. Before, Starship weapons training does both. So should you not even use projectile weapon training? Should you get rid of that? But in order to get these so-called supremacy little little things, you have to be able, for instance, like Tachyon Beam 3 can only be trained if you put skill points into projectile weapon training. We're not going to need projectile weapon training. On the old one, you were able to do both. Have projectile weapon training if you're going to use projectiles like torpedoes, or you're going to be able to use beams. Either one. Now you have to choose. You have no discretion. Even though you don't need that, you have to put skill points in it to be able to get this other end. And to a person that just looks at it, that's new, they would just say, oh, okay, well, everything that looks in the tactical is just everything that I should put my points into. And so they end up just choosing just tactical. Whereas on the old system, it's very nuanced. It's very nuanced. So that's just one, just a couple of instances in which it's like,
yeah. I could see that, and if I were to, and again, like I always say, like I've never done MMOs and not really interested in it, and that's part of the reason why I'm not on STO. But if I were on something like that and wanted to invest the time into it like that, I would want something that's more particular and something that gives you more options, not less. Something that would, as you're saying, with the attack patterns, like if you're building into those specifics, I feel like that gives you a broader range and a higher, not replayability, because MMOs you don't really replay, but it would make you want to keep going back. It would make the playability just that much better, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Vagueness has a lot to do with it. It's just vague. It's so vague. To how it's going to affect.
So you don't truly know what's going to happen with this because they haven't implemented it yet, correct?
Yeah, it's just on the test server. So everybody that's using, and you're not going to know. You're not going to know because you don't. Not everybody plays on the test server. The test server, in fact, is not going to be like the final say of like what this thing's going to look like anyway when they release it on holodeck. Right. So you don't know how this is going to operate necessarily within like the real world. That's also another scary thing. It's also trying to get into the unknown. But the fact, and you'd expect them because it's going to be a big change in STO to talk about anyway. But to have to do a show to say like this is the change that we need, and you know why they're doing the change. It's to bring into players that don't know the more nuanced type of skill set tree that we already have. And to give you an instance, like in the old skill, or what's going to be the old skill tree, is very complicated to know what a good build is versus what a not good build is. So for instance, like, when you get down to like driver coil in the old build, you don't know if you should use it or not. You don't know what it does. So like what you have to do is you start, asking people. It forces you to communicate with people. Because then, should I put points into driver coil? What does driver coil do beyond just, what the description does? Go to the new one, the new skill tree. Driver coil is not even mentioned. So can you even affect that skill? Like, does that skill even matter? So did they get rid of that? Like, how fast?
Yeah.
And driver coil determines how fast you go in some space. So it's like, does that even, can you even do anything with it now?
Yeah.
So it's just like, it's so simple. So they really move things.
It sounds like to me, and forgive me if I'm being ignorant to the situation, but it sounds like to me like there's things that you and others who have been playing the game for years or even months or have gotten into and have put time and effort into building certain skills and whatever else that can be offered, and that those are just going to get erased. And part of the fear is that what happens when those go away, and what happens to that time and effort that you put in, that you spent into that particular skill set, and did any of that even matter if going forward you're not going to be able to use any of that? Yeah. No, exactly. I get that.
And
I have the benefit of playing games for the majority of my life. And I've said this before, I've never been a computer gamer, nor am I a computer gamer now, and I've never been an MMO player for sure.
Yeah, and they've said that you can copy your build 1-to-1. You can't without getting anything extra. But I'm going to tell you the worst part of this, the absolute worst part, and this is where Cryptic is, a greedy company. You don't do a skill tree for free over again. You have to pay real world money. Or you just get enough dilithium that you can just buy the Zen in order to do it. Because it costs 500 Zen to do your tree over again. This is what they're good at you. So, like, let's say you do a tree. And, we do the instance where we were just talking about how, like, suddenly you just go like, holy crap, I shouldn't have put all my points into tactical. You realize that you made a mistake. You didn't do enough research, or you didn't play around with how the tree was going to be before it was implemented into the holodeck and released in the real world. And you realize suddenly that you made a horrible mistake. Guess what you have to do now? You have to pay $5 to change it. It is it's a money-making scheme because it's so confusing. You don't know what's going to happen. You just know you're going to have to redo your tree.
Oh, I've got a few questions, and if you want to go on and dedicate a little bit of time to just talking about MMOs and kind of how they relate to STO on this episode, I'm down. If not, we can save it to the end of the episode. So it's up to you right now, actually.
I'm good.
Okay.
About MMOs.
Okay. So here I've got a couple questions for you. So, do you think that STO would be better if it were on something like the Blizzard server? Because Blizzard, in my opinion, is probably the most popular server for MMOs right now, and it has been for a few years.
No. A better question would be, would it be better served to have it not necessarily a server? Practically just means who's hosting, company-wise and otherwise. Should it be a subscription like Blizzard, though? And the answer is yes. The answer is STO should never have gone to free-to-play. Should never have gone to that. Ever.
And you because it's gone free to play, that because they're trying to broaden their subscription base based off it being free, they're trying to make up for the monetary or the lack of monetary or money just coming in other ways.
Precisely. This is one instance where it's like that. Another instance is they just released a T6 Scimitar that costs $30. That's
so
just one ship.
And this is why I asked you if you wanted to talk about this, because I'm going to go a little bit deeper, and it's going to get a little out of the Star Trek realm and off subject of this podcast, but I'm okay with that. Where I have a hard time with modern games being so money oriented, and when I say modern games, I'm really not a modern gamer by any means. I'm really not, and so like the newest generation of the consoles, I don't own. Like I don't have a PS4 and an Xbox One or anything like that. I don't have a Wii U, even. But I feel like whatever we're doing now, whether it's on our mobiles, on our phones, or if it's the MMOs online through our computers, or even console games with the massive amount of DLC that's out there for almost every game that comes out, I feel like it complicates it so much where, you know, when we were young and the video games that I really liked and still love, you bought a game, you bought a cartridge or even a disc. That was the game. That was the entire game. That was all you got. And for better or worse, that was how it was. And even so recently that it was on the last generation of console games like 360 and PS3, where you bought a game and there was some DLC, but it wasn't necessarily for every game and nearly as big. But now I feel like anytime you do anything with a video game, the immediate afterthought of it is that you're going to buy like either like a new patch or, like I said, a DLC or some sort of online content, or in the case of online or mobile games, you're going to make your progress go way faster and take out a lot of the grinding by just paying money to get something. Like in STO, like the Zen, or in any of the mobile games, like any of the mobile games, they want you to put money in for something.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such a weird business model to me. And I don't really like it. I wish games were more complete. But however, I understand. Like, how long have you been playing STO now? 5 years?
Yes. Yep. 5 years.
Yeah. So you've been playing it for quite a while. So, I mean, they've had to, you know. You probably couldn't play an original Nintendo game. Like, nobody's playing Donkey Kong Country for 5 years, you know. Right. I mean, maybe they played it for a year or something when they're younger, and then like they'll go back to it every now and then, but you're not going to get any new content out of that. So it is the money aspect of it. I mean, is that just the next logical step of what happens now, where you know we just pay for expanses and more content?
Yeah, you can. But it's pay to skip in STO.
Right, and that's how I feel like mobile games are. It's pay to skip.
Skip the grind, yeah. Because everything in STO is free, technically speaking. You could buy everything with dilithium. You just got to wait years and years, essentially, to get anything.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that is the new business model. I mean, I guess capitalism just like took over, the gaming world. I would much rather, like, with STO and every other game, if like STO cost, I don't know, like $300, let's just say. But I got everything that was ever going to come out after that for free. Just get the game. Like, yeah, I would just pay that. Instead of just, like, the way that it is now.
Right. I don't know what the ultimate question I'm trying to get towards with you is. It just, I mean, well, I guess you answered it there. Would paying way more upfront for a more complete game, but how long is it going to take you to explore everything? You know, I just feel like there's a finite amount of time and an infinite number of money and like an infinite number of games because they're always coming out, so you're always going to switch. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, at what point? I mean, I feel like we replaced buying a bunch of games like it was like back in the days of cartridges. Instead of buying 50 games. Mm-hmm. For more and more content, and some of them being good and some of them being bad, we're just spending more money on one game to try to make it better and more inclusive.
Yeah.
And I don't know how, I don't know why that business model took off, and I don't know why that business model is succeeding, but it is, for better or worse. And I honestly, I don't really have an opinion on it. I'm just curious about it.
Well, I definitely say that the free to play destroyed the game, because the grind got ridiculous. It just got ridiculous after it, and it also created it created a power creep that wasn't really seen before. Because then, like, the people that, the game's been accused of being pay to win, and it's not necessarily like that. But like when you have like some skills on a ship that cost like $30, that practically makes or break the game. Like you need that skill to be like fantastic. That's really jacked up. And like this skill set thing, like to have like a really good skill set, you're gonna make mistakes. You're gonna want to redo your skill set. But in the back of your head, in order to get to the perfect skill set, if you make mistakes, you're going to have to pay $5 to do it over. And to like require that of your player base, that's really jacked up.
Yeah, I agree. It's not good to take money or ask for money for mistakes. Mm-hmm. I mean, exactly what you just said. It's not okay for you to ask for money because the player made a mistake, because the player is going to make mistakes.
Yeah. Blizzard was lucky with World of Warcraft.
But they also have Diablo and StarCraft. They're also both fairly popular. So,
yeah. I mean, far more larger player base, I would say, than STO. Definitely, and certainly larger now. But I don't know what Blizzard would do. I think that's a good question. What would Blizzard do differently than what Cryptic does with STO? The thing about Blizzard is it would probably take them about 6 months to launch like new content or like something in STO, where STO tries to change the game every week. And that's I think a really big difference, and something I look as a bigger positive in STO than in something like World of Warcraft.
Yeah, okay, I see. It's so weird. I feel almost like an outsider looking in. Like I really like video games, but I'm so behind on video games that like now I can almost just classify myself as a retro gamer. And I don't want to say that I'm a retro gamer because I don't collect video games or anything like that. But I mean, everything that I know about, like I would say I'm probably 5 years behind the curve on video games, if not more. Which is weird because it's a medium that I really love and a medium that I'll really defend and a medium that I'm really into, but I don't do anything with modern video games at all.
Mm-hmm. No, I definitely suggest it.
Yeah, I mean, listening to you every week about STO, like it sounds fun and interesting, but like I don't know if it's something that I'll ever actually join. Just because it's so foreign. Like part of the reason I would join is because of the familiarity of Star Trek, and it sounds like it's one of the few Star Trek games that is actually fun. There's so many Star Trek games out there that are so hard and annoying and or boring or poorly done. This one seems like it's actually the best of all worlds, where it's not necessarily boring, it's not necessarily hard, and it actually is kind of fun to play for an extended period of time.
Yeah.
Which is what Star Trek needs in a video game, because I've played too many Star Trek games where I'm just like,
I mean, it does have that Star Trek element to it. Not as much exploration as it should.
No.
I mean, I hate to say this, but like, you can replace the word Star Trek in Star Trek Online with pretty much anything, and it'd just be the same game. Unfortunately.
No. Right.
I mean, it's the storylines that keep it Star Trek, because those are all centered. I mean, they have the the actors do voiceovers, so
yeah,
I mean, it has that. I think it's good. I think it's a good thing to have Star Trek Online, particularly because it keeps Garrett Wang around, among others and other things.
You got to give that guy something to do, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm. It's just being in the last year simplified so much so that people that have been around for a really long time, I mean, since the beginning of STO, have really noticed a change in the dynamics of who's getting involved in it. And I think a lot of people are threatened by that, or scared of, like, new people coming in.
Yeah.
But, and the thing about, like, World of Warcraft does what works, and they keep it going. Yeah. I don't think STO is very good at doing that. But I'll get you involved. I'll do something positive next week.
This is the longest Star Trek Online conversation we've ever had.
Yeah. But I mean, we'll talk.
That's okay.
I'll get you involved.
Okay.
It's it's going to be around for a while. I know it's going to be around for a while.
I'm sure.
It's not going to die. It's just going through some growing pains right now. That's all.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's move on to Film Trek.
There you go.
Saddle up. Lock and load. Star Trek Insurrection is the #1 action movie in America.
Moving people out!
The New York Times calls it seductively appealing.
Watch a few movies, take a few notes. It was fun.
So this week is my week, and I wanted to start this off by saying we don't usually... The way that we've usually done this is like, let's choose a scene that highlights something that we like in a movie. Or a topic. And last week, Shaun covered a really, really good question. This week, I'm going to cover a scene that I don't like. I have done I did do the weird Uhura dancing thing. I mean, I've done stuff like that in the sense of like this, is not good Trek. I don't like this scene. This is from Star Trek Into Darkness, and this is an interaction in between Spock and Captain Kirk, and I'm gonna play it and then talk about it.
Jim, where were you? For what? Your medical exam. 10 hours ago, you were in a damn firefight. Now it's my duty as ship's doctor.
I'm fine, boss.
The hell you are.
I'm fine. Status report, Mr. Spock.
The Enterprise should be ready for launch by the time we arrive.
Good.
Captain, thank you for requesting my reinstatement.
You're welcome.
As I am again your first officer, it is now my duty to strongly object to our mission parameters.
Of course it is.
There is no Starfleet regulation that condemns a man to die without a trial. Something you and Admiral Marcus are forgetting. Also, preemptively firing torpedoes at the Klingon homeworld goes against
You yourself said the area is uninhabited. There's only going to be one casualty. And in case you weren't listening, our orders have nothing to do with Starfleet regulation.
Wait a minute. We're firing torpedoes at the Klingons?
Regulations aside, this action is morally wrong.
Regulations aside, pulling your ass out of a volcano is morally right. I didn't win any points for that.
Oh, Jim, calm down.
I'm not going to take ethics lessons from a robot.
Reverting to name-calling suggests that you are defensive and therefore find my opinion valid.
I wasn't asking for your opinion. Bones, get that thing off my face.
Captain, our mission could start a war with the Klingons, and it is by its very definition immoral. Perhaps you should take the requisite time to arrive at this conclusion for yourself.
Captain Kirk. Science Officer Wallace. I've been assigned to the Enterprise by Admiral Marcus. These are my transfer orders.
You requested an additional science officer, Captain?
I wish I had. Lieutenant Carol Wallace. Doctor.
All right, I'm going to stop it there. So that's obviously like the reason why I don't like that scene and why it doesn't work is it's a total ripoff of the Genesis Project scene where Bones is like, you know, holy cow, look at what they can do. We can create a planet and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, fighting with, you know, the Kirk, Spock, and McCoy kind of interaction thing. I built this to begin with more of, and it is, more of a Kirk and Spock thing. But you have the funniness, you have the hilarity of what's going on with McCoy and, you know, trying to scan his face, and the interaction just doesn't work. And on top of that, I don't think it really works on what they're trying to say with the torpedoes, or convey it across in such a way, like almost to the point where like the dialogue should have been switched. Like what Kirk is saying in this scene should have been like what McCoy is saying in this scene.
Yes,
that's totally what I'm thinking.
No, I agree, and listening to it, I absolutely agree with you. Those kind of almost name calling you would expect out of Dr. McCoy, not Kirk. William Shatner's Kirk never really did that with Spock, but McCoy always did. DeForest always did that to Nimoy's Spock. It's weird. One thing listening about this clip too that I would have never really thought of, I guess, or didn't think of until now, just listening to it, is how rapidly they're going back and forth. So it's just like, as soon as I'm done talking, you start talking. As soon as you're done start talking, he's going to start talking. There's no pause. There's no letting anything sit. There's no letting anything kind of sink in. It's just, here's line A, here's line B, here's line C, here's line A, here's line B, here comes line D, here comes line A again, here comes B. Like, there's no time to breathe. And I mean, that's why this is an action movie. That's why it's not, I mean, it's not a particularly good Star Trek movie, but it's a decent action movie because there's no time to stop and think. The action is always happening. And when you're watching that scene, which I actually haven't watched in a while, but remember it, especially from listening to the dialogue, is that it goes. There's all kinds of stuff happening in the background. They're getting on the shuttle to go back on the Enterprise, and they're talking and walking, and Bones has the scanner, and so there's a minimal amount of action going on, while all this rapid fire dialogue back and forth between all these characters is also happening. It's really, when I listen to it just now, it's a little disorienting just how quickly people are talking to each other, and the way Chris and I run, the way that we run this podcast. I mean, basically, it's a live podcast with minimal editing, and it's a conversation back and forth. So there are a couple ums in there. There's some pauses. There's I stop or I end a thought, and then before you start up on your next thought, there's a pause because you say, "Oh, Shaun got done talking. I think about it," and and now I'm speaking. Or if you get done talking about something, I think about it, and then I start talking. And it takes a minute, not the moment that you're done saying the last word of your sentence do I start speaking up. Very rarely. And if we do that, it's almost like we're interrupting each other.
Yeah. Yeah, you'd expect that, and it's just not in that. Good dialogue. Good dialogue. Dumbed down action is what it is, and you're right about that.
Yeah. And I'm going to bring up Star Trek 2 again. They did not do that. There wasn't rapid fire. I mean, outside of... No, not even outside of anything. It's usually just, even when you look at like when Kirk and Spock are talking in the beginning, right after the Kobayashi Maru simulation, there are pauses where it's just like, message Spock, and then Spock, there's a breath in between those sentences, and Spock says, none that I'm aware of. Except, of course, happy birthday. And so even within his own thought, he takes a breath, and that's not happening here.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. It's just like, we used to talk about this a lot when I was in college, when I was doing music. It's just like, you play the rests. The rests, the silences are as much a part of the music as the actual notes on the page are.
Yeah.
The silence is almost as great as any sort of horn hit or what have you, string hit or anything there in between.
I think that's a great analogy. And it's completely true. I mean, that's how people talk. It's how people talk.
Yes.
But, not in that movie.
Yeah.
So I wanted to play that.
No, nice. I like that. That was a unique film segment.
Thank you. A little different.
But a good one. Yeah.
Thank you. Sweet. Let's get to audience track then.
All right.
Open hailing frequencies.
Frequencies open, sir.
This is Jean-Luc Picard, captain of the Enterprise.
So, if you want to get a hold of us, you can get a hold of it. How can they get a hold of us, Sean?
Well, there's many ways that you can get a hold of us. So, my favorite is Twitter. You can get a hold of us on Twitter. Our handle for the podcast is The Trek Brothers, at The Trek Brothers on Twitter. You can get a hold of myself at Shaun Makita. You can get a hold of Chris at Lethargic Nerd. Not only that, we do have our website. It's thetrekbrothers.wix.com/home. That has all of our episodes. It has a link to our Twitter. It has polls. It has our blog on there. Chris and I are not the greatest about updating on our blog, but that doesn't mean that it won't ever get updated. It just means that we don't update it very often. So if you pay attention, maybe it'll get a surprise and one of us will post something. But nonetheless, a good umbrella for the entire podcast if you want to see what we're all about. And finally, and maybe most formidably, we're on YouTube, and every single episode of the Trek Brothers is on YouTube. We are on episode 17 of the Trek Brothers right now. You can find us on YouTube, again, just like everything else, The Trek Brothers. So if you go to YouTube and type in The Trek Brothers, you'll find us. You can subscribe to us. You can like and comment on any of the videos. We check it. We'll find out. We look forward to any of those. Like, people are watching, but we want people to like, comment, and subscribe on all of our videos too, on YouTube, since that is the main place that you can find us. We do a week by week SoundCloud and iTunes at the Trek Brothers as well. So the most current episode is always on SoundCloud as well as iTunes. But if you're looking for an entire discography, as it were, YouTube is the place to go.
Yes.
So,
indeed.
and
yes.
don't forget, you can always email us. We are at thetrekbrothers@gmail.com. That's always open if anybody still wants to email us anything. Questions, comments, likes, dislikes. Hey, stop running the episodes in order and just listen to this episode, or talk about this episode, or do this for Film Trek, or do that for your Trek, or do this as a verdict, or what do you think about anything? We'll talk about anything.
Yeah, stop talking about Voyager. Chris likes Voyager too much. Why does Chris like Voyager too much?
DS9 fans, tell us about how much we're wrong.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from DS9 fans. Create some tension there, I'm sure.
Yeah, we'll sit around the campfire and talk about how we all dislike Enterprise together.
Yeah, that'd be our horror story around the campfire in the cave.
There's always common ground. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Sweet. That was wonderful.
Yeah, so
cool.
I think that's an episode.
I think so too. Oh my goodness. It's been a good one. I've enjoyed this.
Yeah.
I've talked a lot about Scooby-Doo mysteries. Like every week I mention Scooby-Doo mysteries, and today I finally watched the movie Song of the Vampire. And it was definition of the Scooby-Doo mystery. You meet
really?
Yeah, you meet Van Helsing's descendant in the very beginning of the film, and you just know like that's going to be the villain. And so like in the very beginning of this episode that we covered today, you just know it's going to be ridiculous. As I open playing that. Hey, listen. Everybody out there, I don't care what Trek you like, so long as you like Star Trek. Hey, you might really, really love that episode that we talked about today. You might think baseball caps are the coolest thing to ever happen in Star Trek. And I don't know if I agree with that. But I hope you're listening out there, and thank you if you are. I'm Chris. See ya.
I'm Shaun. Hey-o.